portions of central Florida. The conditions today will only deteriorate. Several tornado warnings have already been issued. We just had a confirmed tornado warning just to the north of I-75. That was impacting portions of what was it, Broward County,
Collier County,
and we just actually showed you that live from a Florida DOT camera. So please be careful. We have a tornado watch that impacts and covers 12 million people as we head into tonight.
One of the guarantees with Hurricane Milton will be these tornadoes. We also have a guarantee that storm surge is going to be significant, perhaps even unsurvivable. Somewhere along Florida's Gulf Coast, west central or southwest Florida, storm surge values could reach up to 15 feet, and across the peninsula, hurricane force winds are going to lead to widespread power outages, heavy rain. We have the flooding threat too. That has been on the increase to the last 12, 24 hours.
Yeah, those total potentials really going up. So Milton is expected to track across Florida. It's going to jump from the Gulf into the Atlantic Basin and really stay and maintain. It's expected to stay a hurricane as it heads from west to east. In the process, we're looking at life-threatening storm surge even for portions of Florida's east coast.
Couple of updates to bring you. Orlando International and Orlando Sanford Airport, they're now closed. They suspended commercial operations as of 8 o'clock Eastern. The only caveat that airports will remain open there to accept emergency aid and relief flights as necessary. They join Tampa International, which closed down yesterday morning. Airport officials say they're going to reopen when it's safe to do so. We are watching what's unfolding on the ground this morning with, as Marissa had mentioned, the tornado warnings. The Tampa mayor, Jane Castor, delivering a stark message to residents. Take this evacuation order seriously. Let's listen.
Is literally catastrophic. And I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
There's just no other way to put it, right? If you live in a zone that's under a mandatory evacuation order, get out while you can. Tampa police, they were out on streets and suburbs, in the suburbs, making sure residents had gotten word that they needed to evacuate those different zones. Let's head out to the ground. We're joined by Fox Weather's Robert Ray this morning. Robert's from Tampa. It's becoming one of those situations. I mean, we were tracking tornadoes this morning in South Florida, Robert, but we're waiting and watching so closely where Milton could ultimately track, and Tampa is still very much at play.
Oh, huge. Yeah, good morning to you and everyone here from Tampa. And we are looking at that track right now as well on the ground. I'll get into that in a second. But look at behind me. This is Garrison Channel that leads into Hillsborough Bay in downtown Tampa. And then that's goes into Tampa Bay and then out into the Gulf of Mexico, surrounded by water channels and bays here in Tampa. And that is a major concern regarding the track of Milton as it comes in, and the push of water and the potential, right, for 10 to 15 feet of surge. And you know, guys, we look at some of this video around here from about 2 weeks ago. Into this pocket to actually make a landfall here, made the landfall to the north, but nonetheless, the impacts with the surge. 5+ feet in some of the barrier islands, tearing up those islands and pushing debris in there. And then everybody tried to get all of their belongings out of businesses and homes and then put them on the side of the road. And then sure enough, Milton came up and caused mandatory evacuations. And so all of that debris, most of it, could not be taken out. And so it still sits there, and it will be pushed around and whipped around like projectiles as Milton comes in based upon this track. And again, you know, we've been talking about this. Doesn't matter the category of Milton, whether it gets downgraded to a 3 before landfall or it sustains as a 4, or God forbid goes up to a 5. The width of this and the impacts are so significant, you know, and we see these cameras, these remote cameras up and down the coastline, all the way from Fort Myers Beach to Sarasota to here in Tampa. I mean, Fort Myers Beach could have up to 12 feet of storm surge. Remember, 15 feet was what Ian brought in 2 years ago and decimated that entire area. And they're still rebuilding, and they've been hit by multiple storms in the past 2 months that have brought in other surge. And the people there are exasperated. And so we're bracing here in Tampa this morning, and we are doing some recon.
Good morning. Welcome to live coverage of Hurricane Milton. We're going to break away from this live feed and go over to a live feed where they're having a press conference. I think is in Osceola County. Yes, they're having a press conference right now. We're going to break away from this live feed that we have here on our screen here. We're going to break away from this live feed here, and we're going to go over to a press conference is being held in Osceola County. One moment for us, please, as we go over to that live feed that we're having here. Hear what's going on in this neck of the wood, because this thing is coming directly towards us, and whether we like it, yes or no, it is coming. We're asked for everyone to listen in your prayers.
At Middleton High School. So we still have plenty of room, folks. We just opened additional 3 shelters, and we still have capacity again at Steinbrenner High School, Pizzo Elementary, and Middleton High School. The state has extended their transportation operations, the FDM bus service at 800-729-3413. And you can catch a ride on those FDM buses, 7 a.m. till noon today.
Okay, we want to go now to Tallahassee because Governor Desantis is holding a news conference.
Nonstop now for weeks to prepare and respond to Hurricane Helene, and then now to prepare and respond to this new major hurricane. The common virtue has been dedication to the task at hand, dedication to responding to help our fellow Floridians in danger, and dedication to ensuring that Florida weathers this storm and emerges stronger on the other side. We are prepared and we will respond. I've spoken to the president. We remain in regular contact with FEMA, and we are marshaling all available resources to be able to prepare and respond to Hurricane Milton. I also want to thank the 20 other states who are assisting Florida ahead of the storm. This is just what we as Americans do. We've had opportunities to help other states in the past, including most recently in Western North Carolina. And I think it shows the spirit that these states are stepping up and providing really valued support. We still have a state of emergency for 51 Florida counties. Hurricane Milton is still a major, very strong hurricane. It's currently a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 155 miles per hour. That is just a whisker shy of a Category 5. And while there is the hope that it will weaken more before landfall, there is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major, major punch and do an awful lot of damage. As you can see behind me, the Florida Division of Emergency Management is fully deployed, fully active. This has been a footing now for over 2 weeks, given both of these storms. The state is actively fulfilling over 1,500 missions. We've delivered massive amounts of supplies, meals, water bottles, sandbags, tarps, generators to be able to help our local communities respond to this storm. We've also deployed more than 11,000 feet of flood protection systems and erected them around critical infrastructure like hospitals, wastewater treatment facilities, and electric infrastructure. Generators have been deployed at shelters and to support sheltering operations. Starlink internet has been deployed across the entire state of Florida. We have surged an additional 600 ambulances, and they are currently in operation helping in the effort. The state of Florida has considerable fuel reserves ahead of Milton, and it's staged, and they will be utilized as needed following the storm. We've already dispatched a lot of fuel in the lead up to this, but we still have on hand 1.6 million gallons of diesel and 1.1 million gallons of gasoline. There is no, right now, fuel shortage. However, demand has been extraordinarily high, and some gas stations have run out. To be able to help ameliorate that, the Florida Highway Patrol has facilitated 106 long-distance fuel tanker escorts with sirens getting through traffic, totaling almost 1 million gallons of gasoline from ports in Tampa, Jacksonville, Everglades, and Manatee, and they are continuing with the fuel escorts as we speak. I'm in contact with the ports on the west coast of Florida. We'll see how this storm impacts those. Clearly, there's a chance that you could have a major impact on Port Manatee as well as on Port Tampa Bay, that could interrupt their ability to receive fuel shipments. And so we're working on contingencies to be able to keep fuel flowing throughout the state of Florida. As we saw this new storm develop, it was clear that a lot of the hardest hit areas on the west coast of Florida from Hurricane Helene had not had major, robust debris removal contracts in place or operations in place. Some of these contractors were good. Some of them were not getting the job done. So you had a major hazard on barrier islands in Pinellas, Manatee, and Sarasota County. So this weekend, I authorized mandated 24/7 debris removal. We took all the Florida Department of Transportation and other agency vehicles, brought them from all across the state, and they are engaged in other missions as their normal course of business, and dedicated it to debris removal. So in a little over 48 hours, and they were working all through the night in the wee hours of the morning in places like Manatee, Sarasota, and Pinellas. They were able to remove 55,000
Oh Lord, you
cubic
know
yards
I bought
of
something
debris.
banana
So that's
did
over 3,000
stupid me.
truckloads
Never
of
buy no
debris.
salt,
And it's
man.
our estimation that on those
Family
barrier
Lawrence, you
islands,
know, I know,
they
said
were able
you
to
pay too
make a
long.
dent in the debris and reduce
Oh
it
Lord,
by
I'm
about
open and John,
50%
no,
just from
stop,
what
man,
Jared
and
Purdue
banana,
and the other agencies were able to get done. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved in
Yeah,
that.
this is the
It
Ron
did not
DeSantis
stop
moment.
since this weekend. We're now in a position where it's likely the conditions are going to deteriorate. And so we're going to have to wind that down. But they did make a difference, and there will be less damage from this storm as a result of getting that debris out than there otherwise would have been. The Florida Department of Transportation is staging the following assets ahead of the storm: 156 bridge inspectors, 328 cut and toss personnel, and over 1,500 pieces of heavy equipment. Florida National Guard, Florida State Guard, Florida Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida Highway Patrol have activated additional personnel in advance of the storm. We have hundreds of state search and rescue personnel on hand, 26 total teams. They are currently embedded in the potential impact sites along the West Coast to begin immediate rescue operations as soon as the storm passes. The National Guard is deploying 6,000 Florida National Guardsmen, as well as 3,000 National Guardsmen from other states. And so we thank for the support on that. We have 34 search and rescue that have been brought in from other states. We have 500 tactical vehicles, including 180 high water vehicles, aerial, water, and ground National Guard search and rescue teams. This is the largest Florida National Guard search and rescue mobilization in the entire history of the state of Florida. Our Florida State Guard is also deploying almost 200 soldiers, 10 maritime crews, 3 high water UTVs, 2 UH-60 Blackhawk helicopters, 4 drone teams, 15 cut and toss crews, 2 amphibious rescue crews. We want to thank them. I mean, this was just a dream a couple years ago that they would be involved, and there was a lot of unfair criticism when we stood it up, but they have made a huge difference in this hurricane season. They're going to continue to do it here. We have also worked with the utilities to have the largest staging of utility workers and linemen in advance of the storm any time in American history. We will have in Florida, by the time the storm arises, over 50,000 linemen, and those linemen are being brought in from places as far away as California. So as soon as that storm passes, you're going to see the assessments and the power restoration efforts commence immediately. Additionally, the state of Florida has assisted with the evacuation of 352 healthcare facilities in the potential path of the storm. 16 hospitals have been evacuated. The state veteran nursing homes are currently located that are in the cone, are all accepting families of their residents to shelter with them. All of those are hurricane proof. All of them are outside of flood zones. So if you do have a family member that's in one of our state nursing homes, you can go and you can shelter with them. That's a safe option, and I know the veterans would appreciate it. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement is directing deployment of additional 500 out-of-state law enforcement officers. These officers will help respond after the storm to maintain law and order. And there is going to be a lot of damage from this storm. There's going to be opportunities for people to try to take advantage of that. My message to you is don't even think about it. we are going to come down hard on you. You are not going to be, you're going to regret that you tried to do that. So I appreciate all the other folks from out of state who are coming in to supplement this effort. We need to maintain law and order. FDLE's mutual aid team is managing more than 70 active law enforcement missions, including identifying post-storm response squads. And these are really important missions, and we're happy for that. So we're preparing for Milton, but we're also still recovering from Hurricane Helene. When Hurricane Helene hit, we reactivated the Florida Disaster Fund. We are now accepting donations into the Florida Disaster Fund for both storms, both Helene and for Milton. This is a private fund. It's affiliated with the state in terms of disaster, but it's tax deductible donations. We distributed $63 million after Hurricane Ian to help people largely in Southwest Florida. This is something that is really, really important. So I've directed Volunteer Florida to keep the fund activated for Hurricane Milton. I want to thank, there's already been millions raised for Helene. I want to thank Lennar, Wells Fargo, Walmart, and Publix for making really significant donations. And I know there's going to be a lot more that are going to want to do it. To contribute to the Florida Disaster Fund, you can text disaster to 20222, disaster to 20222, or you can visit floridadisasterfund.org. So now we're bearing down to where the storm is going to arrive within the next 24 hours. You still have time to evacuate if you are in an evacuation zone, particularly if you're in Manatee, Sarasota, Charlotte, those areas. I mean, this track can bounce around. It's not guaranteed it's going to hit there. A lot of the solutions have it going there. You have time to do that. Now, conditions aren't going to be great today. I would say that the roads and the interstates, they are flowing. We've waived tolls. We've done all that so people can do. But the best option would probably be just to evacuate within your own county to one of the shelters. All those counties have multiple shelters that are open. There's a lot of space in those shelters right now. And certainly it would be safe to do a very short evacuation, tens of miles, rather than get on the interstate and go. The roads are still open. People can do that. But I just want to warn people that the conditions are likely going to continue to deteriorate throughout the course of the day. We had, of course, on Monday, when the initial evacuations were coming down, particularly in the Tampa Bay area, had a lot of traffic on I-4 and on I-75. FDOT did the emergency shoulder plan. That helped, but it was slow. And those roads can be very slow anyways. By the time we got to the end of the night, through the wee hours of the morning, it was going pretty quickly. Yesterday was not as bad on those roads as it was on Monday. But what we did see is Alligator Alley down in southern Florida was about 150% of its normal capacity. And I think that's because as people saw the storm potentially bending a little further south, I think a lot of people in Southwest Florida decided to evacuate across the state. And so that's that. The roads now are good, but I would just caution the conditions are not great now, and they're likely going to get worse as the day goes on. Of course, we do have a lot of mandatory evacuations in place. If you want to get a hotel, you can go to visitflorida.com/Priceline, Expedia.com/Florida. That is the emergency accommodation module that is there. I'm not sure what availability there's going to be in a lot of these places at this point, but if that's something that you're interested in, you can try that. Of course, we've worked with the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association for distress rates for hotels, as well as waiving pet fees. And I know a lot of the hotels in the state of Florida have responded very positively for that. So I just want to thank them for doing that. We've also partnered with Uber for Hurricane Milton to provide free rides to and from shelters and counties with active evacuation orders. So if you want to utilize that, you go to when you do the ride, you do the promo code Milton Relief, just one word, Milton Relief. OnStar has activated crisis mode, which provides free crisis assistance services and in-vehicle data for Chevy, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac owners. Schools, most of the school districts in the state are closed today. Obviously, if you get out of the path in like the Panhandle, not as much, but in that Florida Peninsula, virtually all school districts are closed. All Florida counties and Miccosukee and Seminole tribes are assisting the state with storm response. And I want to thank all those for their great work. We have 149 general population shelters that are open throughout the state. The current total shelter population is just 31,000 individuals. We have room in those shelters for a total population of almost 200,000 individuals. So there is space available in these shelters. I know a lot of people would rather stay in a hotel, stay with friends, and that's fine. But especially now as the storm's getting closer, you may be able to get in your car and drive 10 miles, get to a shelter, ride the storm out, and then be able to go as you see fit. And hopefully you'll be able to get back to your place very quickly. But space is available. So there are 36 county-owned special needs shelters that are open and operating in counties that are in the path of the storm. Schools and other facilities are now also being used as supplementary state-supported shelters across the state. The state of Florida has now opened 6 state-operated supplemental shelters. These may not ultimately be needed, but you have a lot of people in the evacuation zones. I think most people decided to just leave and find something on their own. We still have a lot of room in the traditional shelters, but out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to open additional options. So the 6 state-operated supplemental shelters currently are Hard Rock Event Center, 5223 Orient Road in Tampa, City Furniture, 3205 South Frontage Road in Plant City, Bay Care, 1802 North Del Mabry Highway in Tampa, Life Science Logistics, 310 North Galloway Road, Lakeland, Babcock Ranch, 43281 Cypress Parkway and Punta Gorda, the Wiregrass Ranch Sports Camp, 33021 Sports Coast Way in Wesley Chapel, Florida. That site also has capabilities to service special needs individuals. And Kevin is also working on setting up a 7th site. Now, those state-supported shelters, they do have generators, so you will have access to power. I think you have Starlink at those. They've got Starlink internet. So look, it's not the 4 seasons, but there are some things there that will make it tolerable to be able to get through the next 24 to 36 hours. You can find the shelter options at floridadisaster.org/shelters. You can also find your county's EM page at floridadisaster.org/counties, floridadisaster.org/counties. So people have time now to evacuate if they are in the area of an evacuation zone. We see the storm is a very strong Category 4. I've said from the beginning, the prognostications are it's likely going to weaken before it gets, but it may not. And even if it does weaken, it's still going to be a major, major impact. So you still have time now to make decisions to protect yourself and your family. Massive amounts of space at these shelters. The roads are flowing. Conditions are going to get bad. So you just got to be very careful with that. But certainly these shelters are a very live option. I want to just finally thank everybody. When you have these emergencies with a major hurricane, it's a huge deal. We spin up all state agencies, everyone here at the EOC, working basically round the clock. You have all the counties and cities that were in the path of Hurricane Helene. And it wasn't just the Big Bend where you took the blow. It was massive surge up and down the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. A lot of damage was done. There were thousands of rescue missions that were effectuated immediately after the storm. Huge things done like fixing the road and SR 786, helping with the bridges. There was so much that was done in the immediate aftermath and is still being done in that. Then you have another storm that developed and immediately you're back on that posture, round the clock, no time to rest, no time to sleep for a lot of these folks. And it's not easy. And so I just want to say on behalf of the state of Florida, thank you for discharging your duties. Thank you for accepting this mission. It's not going to be easy, but there's no better group of people that I would want responding to this than the folks that we have doing it throughout this state. Whether you're talking about the counties down on the Gulf Coast of Florida, whether you're talking about the people that we have here assembled in Tallahassee, these folks have proven themselves. They're working hard, and we will get the job done. Okay, Kevin Guthrie.
Thank you, Governor. I want to reiterate that we will get the job done. Absolutely. The men and women behind me are the best in the country, and they lead the industry in what it is that we do. The men that are standing behind me and the men and women that are state agency heads, everybody has checked their ego at the door, and all it is about teamwork right now. We're going to get that done. We're less than 24 hours from landfall, and the governor has been working tirelessly alongside all of us to ensure that we have all the resources needed ahead of landfall. Today, we continue to move thousands of resources to staging areas across the state. We want to ensure we have the right resources to move into the right places at the right time. Life-threatening storm surge is expected along Florida's west coast. Counties from Levy to Collier have ordered mandatory evacuations, and I urge you to heed those warnings if you're in one of those zones. You might not want to evacuate, but there are free shelters in your area. If you live in a mobile or manufactured home and you're in this impact area, please go to a local shelter. If you rely on power for medical devices or other things, please go to a local shelter. You live in a home that can't withstand the hurricane force winds, again, please go to a local shelter. We have enormous capacity. We're about 31,000 sheltered last night. We have the ability to do well over 200,000 in the impact area. If you're making a decision, you say, oh, it's too late, there's not enough room for me, there is room. Please come. Your home and belongings can be replaced, but you cannot. You can find a list of all shelters, including our state-run shelters that the governor just mentioned, by visiting floridadisaster.org/shelters. We also have options to assist residents with evacuating. We still are running our shuttle service. You could also go to floridadisaster.org for updates on that 1-800 number. That number is 1-800-729-3413. Again, that's 1-800-729-3413. We also partner with Uber, and you can call them and put in the discount code of Milton Relief. That's Milton Relief, and that'll be a free ride to the shelter. If you don't live in an evacuation zone and decide to shelter in place, make sure you have enough supplies to weather the storm and after the storm conditions cease. We recommend you have 7 days of supplies on hand. Power outages are expected with this storm. Charge your electronic devices now before the power starts to go out. If anybody's looked at a radar in the last 8 hours, you see a lot of rain heading into the impact area. You see tornado warnings. I think as of our 7:15 briefing with my executive staff, we had 7 tornado warnings. And as we were walking in here, I saw 2 more. So there's been roughly 10 tornado warnings. Power will start going out. So you need to make sure your electronic devices are charged now. If you can get outside and it's safe to do so, make sure you're bringing out all that furniture, potted plants, decorations. If you can pick it up, put it up. The strong winds can obviously pick that stuff up and deposit it much somewhere else. During the storm, we want to start messaging this. We do it every single time. But again, if you've decided to shelter in place and during the storm, you hear this tree snapping, maybe the power popping, that can mean that there is flying debris and you should seek shelter immediately inside your home. Treat it as if it's a tornado. Get into the innermost portion of your home. If you have some type of lightweight mattress, pull it over the top of you. Protect yourself from falling debris. Treat it as just as if it's a tornado. If you find yourself all of a sudden, it is absolute calm. You've gone from snapping trees and power lines and the sound of destruction to absolute nothing, like it's a clear day in the middle of the summer. You're in the eye wall of the hurricane and you need to stay in place. Do not go outside. Do not look around. This eye wall has been moving anywhere from about 4 nautical miles to upwards of 12 to 16 nautical miles. If it reforms the eye wall and starts to collapse again, you may have only minutes in a situation that could be life-threatening. So please make sure you do not go outside if that happens. For more updates in your area, remember to follow your local county emergency management agency's instructions. The agency also has activated the State Assistance Information Line to provide information to Floridians to receive up-to-date information from us. Residents and visitors can call this toll-free hotline at 1-800-342-3557, 1-800-342-3557. before I close, in anticipation.
Okay, you have just been listening to the governor there and other officials in Tallahassee. A big concern for people all week has been debris from Hurricane Helene sitting curbside ahead of Milton. And Larissa Scott really has been talking about this all morning in St. Petersburg what was the neighborhood? The Shore Acres, the Shore Acres neighborhood in St. Petersburg. Now, the governor says that crews were able to remove about 55,000 cubic yards of debris in the Bay Area, which is reducing the debris by about 50%.
That's a really good thing because, of course, the main concern is that those objects would become projectiles. We checked in with Lydia Vasquez, and she showed us how one family had secured some brushes, tree branches, tied them up to a signpost. So people are doing whatever they can at this point until that debris is picked up. Also, Hillsborough County and Tampa City leaders just wrapped up a news conference as well. They gave an update on Hurricane Milton evacuation efforts.
They say right now there's close to 10,000 people that are in shelters, but they still have room for more. The county has opened 3 additional shelters in addition to the 11 that are already open. The additional shelters open at 10:30 this morning. They include Mulrennan Middle School, Lockhart Elementary Magnet School, and Collins PK through 8 school. You cannot bring your pet. You can find a list of these shelters in your county on our website. Just go to our website again. It's abcactionnews.com/hurricane.
And the governor did acknowledge the problem that so many of you have told us about, that you're having trouble finding gas stations that actually have fuel. I know yesterday I had to ride around to 5 stations before I finally found one that had fuel. But the governor says there is no fuel shortage in the state. He says that demand has been high and the state is working to alleviate that. He did say that state troopers are escorting fuel trucks to gas stations to make sure that they have emergency supplies. So you may have to drive for a little while, but you will eventually find one.
ABC Action News reporter Rebecca Petit is joining us live with how the gas supply is looking over in Polk County. You were standing in front of a line right now, Rebecca. I know that you've been driving through several different gas stations. You finally found one that seems to have gas.
That's right. So I'm here at the Wawa on US 98 North in Lakeland. It's one of the only gas stations in Polk County that still has gas available. Now, just take a look at the line of cars behind me. All these cars lined up, just hoping to get their gas tank filled up. The line goes down for about 2 blocks. I'm told tankers came by around 8 this morning and refilled the gas supply here. Almost every gas station in Polk County has run out of fuel, according to Gas Buddy. Most of them have bags over their pumps, and the pumps are wrapped in plastic to protect them from water damage. There are several gas stations completely boarded up. So this has left many drivers on the hunt for gas. I spoke with one man around 5 this morning. He told me he drove around Lakeland for about 45 minutes looking for gas, but had no luck. State troopers are now escorting tankers to resupply gas stations throughout the state. And I did get word that there are 2 gas stations available in Winter Haven that still have gas, and that's the 7-Eleven on Cypress Gardens Ruby Road and Highway 17, the Wawa on Highway 17. For now, I'm live in Lakeland. Rebecca Petit, ABC Action News.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's a good sign that she finally found a gas station with gas. But, even though you have to wait a little while, at least you're going to get some gas. Now, we've been talking about power outages. It is inevitable that it's going to happen. So if you do lose power and you have a radio, you can still get updates from our team of meteorologists and also our reporters here. We partner with 6 local radio stations. Here they are right here.
Our radio partners include 99.5 QIK, 98.7 The Shark, 92.5 Maxima, Q105, Wild 94.1, and Talk 1010 AM. Again, if you lose power, you can still get updates straight from our meteorologists on all of those channels. We will be right back after the break.
There you have it. There you have it. Let me break away from this for a while and go back to what is going on over here in Florida. Many of us don't understand, or many of us rather don't know, that this is a very dangerous hurricane. It's a very dangerous hurricane, and believe you me, it doesn't look good. As I said on CVM last night, in a program that I was invited on, that This reminds me of when Hurricane Gilbert was threatening to come to Jamaica. You get up, the place is as still and as quiet as anything. You don't see any birds in the sky. The sky is overcast. You don't see the trees blowing in the wind or anything. You don't see nothing or hear anything. And that is how it is over here in where I am in Florida. It does not look good. It really do not look good. And we must take this thing very seriously. I'm going to break away from what I'm saying and go over to another channel that has some news about Hurricane Milton. Let's do this right here. Let's do this. The streams that I'm having, I do not own the rights to these streams. Here we go.
Areas of central Florida that include places like Anna Maria, Sarasota, Tampa, Orlando, not in it, but I think you will be added. That watch means several tornadoes could occur.
Unsurvivable storm surge is also going to occur somewhere along Florida's Gulf Coast. The storm surge, it could reach up to 15 feet across the peninsula. We have hurricane force winds too. They're going to lead to widespread power outages, heavy rain going to trigger the flash flooding.
This storm, Hurricane Milton, it will track across Florida, and then it'll move over the Atlantic Ocean Thursday. As it does so, it's expected to still produce a life-threatening storm surge for portions of Florida's East Coast, Southeast Georgia, as well as portions of Southeast South Carolina.
We've already seen, starting yesterday, airports beginning to close in Orlando, the international airport, and the Sanford airport. They're suspending their commercial operations. The airport's going to remain open, though, to accept emergency aid and relief flights as necessary. They do join Tampa. Tampa International closed down yesterday morning. Airport officials say that they will open as soon as it's safe to do so. This has been an area that was hit by Hurricane Helene. In a lot of ways, Hurricane Helene was a historic storm, unleashed a catastrophic 8-foot storm surge on Johns Pass in Madeira Beach. Dylan Hubbard, a business owner in Madeira Beach, was focused, like many were, on rebuilding. It's a tough road, as we know, especially when you're dealing with a significant surge. But now, with Hurricane Milton approaching, he faces yet another significant challenge.
We want to welcome in co-owner of Hubbard's Marina, Dylan Hubbard, to share his story. Dylan, there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, but one of the things I've been alluding to is that it feels like we have this open wound in Florida. And here we go again, right? About 2 weeks exactly to another landfalling hurricane in the state of Florida. So that rawness is there. And we're also hearing you've decided not to evacuate. You're in Seminole, Florida, just to the north of where Tampa is, out of Pinellas County. So let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high up here. I'm on the ridge of Pinellas County. A lot of Pinellas County actually is pretty highly elevated. So I'm well away from any storm surge damage and potential damage, and all boarded up, ready to rock and roll, and hunkered down and doing the best I can to be in a position to where behind the storm we can deploy quickly and check on our assets. We've got a lot of boats hanging around, and we've got a large Hubbard's Marina family and a great team and crew, and we're ready to get back to work. And we did that behind Milton. Right behind Milton came through, or Helene came through, when we got back to work and rebuilt our dock, and we were ready to rock and roll and start doing business again. We actually opened up this past Saturday, ran some dolphin cruises, some deep sea fishing trips, 2 days, and then unfortunately had to close again as Milton approached, and switched into preparing mode instead of cleaning, and getting back to business behind Helene. So it's definitely been an interesting road, to say the least, and we're hunkered down and waiting.
We're looking at some of the damage too, Dylan, that you had shot. I guess while Dylan Hubbard is elevated, Hubbard's Marina is not, and that's the threat I think we're seeing here. Specifically in Madeira Beach, it's going to be a very close call. We hope that you guys escape the worst of it. But as far as rebuilding the dock in a week and a half, that was quick.
Yes, it was actually just 5 days. We had just such a great team. Our bar was destroyed. Our seafood market was destroyed. Our other building where we sell T-shirts and tickets was destroyed. So we still have a long road to go to recover from Helene. That 7-8 foot of storm surge we saw in Madeira Beach with that storm really did a number on our whole region. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and saying a prayer that we don't see that same sustainable damage from Milton. And it looks like potentially we might escape the surge, but we still got a lot of wind to weather here over the next 24 hours. So just holding on and waiting and seeing what happens. But we'll be prepared to get back to business as soon as possible.
Yeah, the wind component already is a dangerous threat, right? And then you add in all the debris that's still on the ground, especially out of places like Madeira there. Want to ask you as well, when we come to just how we've been impacted, obviously the business took a hit, but in terms of people you know, your employees, friends and family, have they had some difficulties recovering after Helene and now preparing for Milton?
Yes, I mean, we're blessed to have a big Hubbard's Marina family. We have 82 employees, and of those 82 employees, 13 lost either their home or their car, or some lost both. So we had huge losses across our staff, our crew, our captains, and then family and friends, locals, neighbors, people that own fellow businesses. A lot of people are reeling from Helene already. So Milton is definitely some salt in that open wound, as you referenced earlier, Marissa, and we're just hoping for the best. And the beautiful thing is the community comes together behind Helene. We saw it. We had a bunch of volunteers coming out, people coming and cooking food, dropping off food. We had a huge number of donations. We were working with the city and other nonprofits to try to coordinate those donations and help people out. We started a GoFundMe and a Hurricane Helene relief fund on our website to help benefit those staff members who were affected. So we'll do the same behind Milton, and I'm confident, like I said, we'll be able to recover. It's pretty devastating, and it's hard to see, and it's a tough loss, but it's all about how you pick yourself back up and get back to it. And it's a price we pay to live in paradise, and it's nice to live where people vacation, but unfortunately we have to deal with these tropical systems.
Yeah, that's just the reality, and hate to see it, especially when we're talking about just 2 weeks' time. We know that Florida has dealt with it too in the past, in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s. Yeah. It's been a minute though since we've seen it so close for you guys. We appreciate it. We wish you the best. Dylan Hubbard, thanks for joining us this morning. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Well, in Pinellas County, county officials are reminding folks that there's still time to evacuate. We want to bring in Fox Weather Storm Specialist Mike Seidel. He's in Madeira Beach this morning. Mike, not sure if you heard, we were just talking to Dylan Hubbard with Hubbard's Marina in Madeira Beach, staying put, saying that he's at a decent elevation. But what we're expecting with Milton, it's going to be such a close call where we could see Milton's worst in Madeira Beach.
Yeah, we're not sure if it's going to be worse here or to our south, down towards Manatee or Sarasota counties. And I will tell you, we're not going to be on the beach after about 1 p.m. Eastern today. We're going to be heading away from the beach and inland. Meanwhile, palm trees getting whisked around by winds right now. They're offshore winds, east-northeast at the area airport, Sarasota, St. Pete, Tampa, and they're gusting as high as 33 miles an hour. So we already have a pretty good gradient between the hurricane and that high to the north, which has brought the great weather to the southeast. And by the way, this has no way of getting up there because of that. So the Carolinas are fine. There's the Gulf of Mexico. We're starting to see some breakers out there, about 2 feet, maybe pushing 3 at times, but the swell really has not come in yet at this point from Milton, which is still several hundred miles away, and it will, though, through the afternoon. You notice the beach has been decimated. There's a lot of sand missing. You can see that right here. Look at these palm trees. The root balls are above ground. The sand should be up about here. You can even see the watering, the irrigation pipes on top of the beach. So just a real mess. Even if you clean it up, the sand will naturally replenish, but boy, we've got another one coming in this afternoon. By the way, thinking of traveling and evacuating or just getting around, the 4 main bridges are going to be closing this afternoon. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge, 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds. They shut that down. That's, I believe, 275. Also, the Gandy Bridge, the Howard Franklin Bridge, and then the Courtney Campbell Causeway that goes out to Clearwater. They're going to close that, too, at some point. DOT keeps an eye on it, also the Florida Highway Patrol. So those bridges will be closed by certainly mid to late afternoon. And as far as the storms right now, they're offshore moving north. You can see on the radar, we've got lightning out there and the risk of waterspouts. There is a marine warning covering basically the whole coast from Lee and Collier County all the way up to Tarpon Springs. And the one in this area goes until 11 o'clock. Again, for mariners, I don't know who would be silly enough to be out there, but these storms can produce waterspouts. Right now, though, they're moving basically parallel to the Gulf Coast of Florida and not our way. But eventually, as these tropical squalls, the outer bands come in, we'll start to get those wind gusts 40, 50 miles an hour, and eventually strong enough to likely, very likely, Steve, knock out the power once again. And rainfall, by the way, local rain gauges already have 1 to 2 inches of rain, and we're a long way from the direct impact of Milton, with a forecast here between a foot and 18 inches of rain, with that flood watch up until tomorrow morning.
If we were curious what an expanding Milton would look like, we have to look no further than what's happening currently. It's been impressive to watch as that rain is getting tapped, the dynamics at play that we have with the front and the jet, allowing some of that moisture, rich tropical moisture, to now fall well ahead of where Milton's core is. Well, Mike, we will be watching it pretty carefully. Thank you for that update. Fox Weather's Mike Seidel from Madeira Beach this morning.
All right, you can already see conditions are deteriorating across Florida. This is why you really need to start thinking about where you're going to ride out the rest of Milton as we get further in towards landfall. Time is running out. Those final preparations, they have to be completed. This is a look at some of those aerials from Treasure Island, Florida. Take a look at the left side of the screen, all that debris. This popular beach town is now a ghost town as Milton closes in. Really that eerie calm before the storm. You can also see some of that debris that was left behind from Helene. It's really piled up everywhere, as I mentioned. Doesn't really matter where you look. Again, left side of the screen, though, it seems you can still see some of those piles. Fox Weather has continuing coverage of Milton and will return after the break.
There you have it, extended coverage of the hurricane that is threatening to Florida. It is going to be a very dangerous hurricane. Thank you all very much. We're trying to stay safe. We're trying to thank you all very, very much. Thank you so much. Thank you all very much. We're trying to stay safe. Thank you all. And it is something that, you know, you can't compare hurricanes with other hurricanes, because some are dangerous and some are extremely dangerous. And, you know, we have to really take this thing seriously. We're listening and watching from around the world on the Eastern Caribbean. It is now 10:48. 9:48 in Kingston City, Jamaica. It is extended coverage of the hurricane. You heard Governor Desantis gave his update on the hurricane. It is barreling down on Florida. It's going to make landfall in Florida in the next hour, in the next couple of hours. I was just told by news reporting that there has been a tornado warning given in effect for Broward County. That's in the Fort Lauderdale area. You're going to hear about those things in Poor County, Osceola County, and all those other counties. You're going to hear about tornadoes being, tornado warnings being put out by various media houses. Based on what we are, or based on where I am right now, you can see outside the breeze is picking up. The wind is picking up. You can see the trees blowing in the wind. Not as what we expected, but a little. Just have to be, you know, very careful. A lot of people are still going out trying to get their little thing in and to hunker down. Trying to get their food and everything in to hunker down. I will, Jamaica TV. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for coming on. Last night, it was very quiet last night. It rained until this morning. But it's not raining now. A little drizzle, not raining now. We're going to go back to our extended coverage of Hurricane Milton, rather. Sorry, Hurricane Milton. We're going to go back to extended coverage of Hurricane Milton. There we go. Let me go back to here because we're just seeing a tornado touchdown somewhere. I have the news center here giving us an update of a tornado that just touched down somewhere in, don't know exactly where, but let us go here and get it up to you all.
Right from this perspective out of Andytown, Florida, but earlier this hour, Stephen, about 30 miles west of Fort Lauderdale, a stovepipe tornado. That was our conclusion. This was a discrete supercell. It actually moved across I-75 at one point, Stephen, and the camera followed it. It was moving right around 25 miles per hour due north. A spectacular and very vivid image. Fortunately so, a much more rural county. It doesn't mean people don't live there, but the chances of hitting a home less likely in that particular area.
Milton bringing some intense winds before Milton actually arrives into Florida. And just a few minutes earlier than that, in Ochopee, Florida, we had this, which had a classic structure, the lowering wall cloud, and a tornado produced. It's because of these shots from the Florida Department of Transportation that the National Weather Service out of Miami was able to issue confirmed tornado warnings. Very close to Alligator Alley. This one just a little bit west in Collier County. Collier County is one of the biggest counties in Florida. Naples sits in Collier as well, but this was extreme northeastern Collier County.
Yeah, they out of Hendry County moving into Glades County. I believe they issued at one point a considerable threat. I believe at the other one we just showed. Either way, there's a tornado watch that extends out of north central Florida from the peninsula all the way down through the Florida Keys. So Tampa, pretty much across to Orlando and all the way down into the Keys with that threat.
Yep, watching that. Well, our live coverage continues on Hurricane Milton. We have hurricane warnings that stretch across the Florida Peninsula from Tampa to Daytona Beach. In Orlando, we have all Disney, Universal Studio parks. They're going to be closed. And just south along the Space Coast at Port Canaveral, all waterside operations. They've been shut down. Let's bring in meteorologist Ari Sarsalari joining us from Orlando. The sense that we have, Ari, I mean, watching those tornadoes to the south, those are all going to be drifting north. Later today, Orlando could have a tornado risk before we talk about the winds associated with that low pressure known as Milton.
Oh, yeah, that thought definitely went through my head when I was just checking my radar app. Yeah, we've got a lot of different things that can happen here. There's so many different impacts that we're going to have in Orlando. And just to kind of update you guys on where we're at right now, like when we got here this morning, there was no wind at all. We had some on and off very light showers. We just had a pretty decent little squall come through. It's ended. We're still getting some light showers, but the wind has noticeably picked up, probably about 10 to 15 miles an hour. It's still not crazy yet. I'll tell you this about Orlando right now. It's really not a ghost town by any means. It's, I'm sure, many less people than you would normally see walking around downtown Orlando on a, geez, I can't even remember what day it is. What day is it today? This is what happens when you travel too much. But the bottom line is, I think there would be more people around here if this storm wasn't around. People know about the storm. Everybody's talking about it. We've got a lot of people walking by. They see the Fox weather hat. They say, how bad's it going to be here? What's going to happen here? And I tell them there's two things that I'm the most concerned about in Orlando. Keep in mind, we are landlocked here, so we don't have to worry about the surge. The surge is going to be a whole different story along the coast, and I know we've been covering that extensively. But just because we don't live along the coast here in places like Orange County doesn't mean that it's not going to be a big deal. I want you to think back if you were here 20 years ago, Hurricane Charlie. This could maybe get close to rivaling that a little bit, depending on the exact track that it takes. I think any way you cut it, starting during the late overnight hours tonight, and I think it's going to peak during the morning tomorrow, early to mid-morning, and then kind of wind down during the afternoon and the evening. I think during that time frame, we'll have hurricane wind gusts. Also, we've got to watch out for flooding. The Weather Prediction Centers put out a level 4 out of 4 risk for excessive rain, which basically means that they're expecting flooding. Here comes another squall right now. So we're starting to get into the outside of this thing a little bit. It's still, I guess we've transitioned a little bit from the quiet before the storm to maybe the outsiders of the storm are starting to show their face a little bit. I want people to take this seriously in Central Florida because I know a lot of focus has been put on this, historic catastrophic storm surge forecast that we have in Western Florida. But keep in mind, there's not been a storm in modern history that has taken this track, this west to east track. It's going to fly across the peninsula. It's not going to have much time to lose its strength that quickly. And speaking of losing strength, let's just talk about that a little bit, because I think people get too hung up on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The Saffir-Simpson scale stinks, straight up. I have no problem saying that. All it rates based on is wind speed. Well, we've also got storm surge, which isn't just a pure function of wind speed. We've also got inland flooding, which we just saw with one of the worst natural disasters in modern history in North Carolina. No disrespect to Saffir or Simpson. I'm sure at the time it seemed like a good idea, but I think we could do a little bit better now. I'll get off my soapbox about that. But listen, this is going to be a very impactful storm here. And guys, once again, we've had to move around a little bit. So I guess I'll lean on you a little bit to kind of update me on some of the latest forecasts here. Would you say that this stuff that's coming through right here, right now in Orlando, maybe you could take a look at the radar, is this outer bands yet? I think we're still kind of outside that, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I think outside of the bands, what's been unique, though, is that this front that's draped across, which is one of the reasons and one of the steering mechanisms of Milton, that's getting tapped. We're seeing some of that rising air over Orlando. So we've got moisture spreading well north. I mean, even into Jacksonville, Ari, where Michael Estime has been in Duval County, we've had that. But it's these sectors that we're watching pretty carefully. Ari, we'll let you go have some dry time. Appreciate that update out of Orlando. But yeah, that rain that we're watching moving through, it's lifting to the north, that south to north motion, and he'll have some breaks here coming up in just a little bit. But a significant threat that we have for some very heavy rain. We'll have to watch in Orlando. Ari mentioning Charlie from 2004. In fact, Charlie was, you could almost say, a harbinger of how the rest of the season would play out for Florida, because Florida was hit very hard with subsequent hurricanes in 2004, Ivan, Gene, so on. This band is what we're going to watch into Fort Myers. That is a nasty looking band, something to follow as the core of Milton is getting a lot closer. From Jacksonville down to Fort Myers, though, we're starting to see some of the rain. Hurricane Milton, it does have the potential to be the worst storm that we've seen in West Central Florida. So officials are urging people in evacuation zone to get out. Fox Weather's continuing coverage of Hurricane Milton is going to guide you as the storm approaches Florida's Gulf Coast. Let's take a listen.
We're going to see impacts like we've never seen before here in Tampa Bay. And I want to caution everybody, to be safe once we get through the storm.
Some locations may be uninhabitable for an extended period. And again, that's why you're being asked to leave.
The ceiling in this room we're in right now is 10 foot 8 inches. So another 5 feet above that. That is certainly not survivable.
There's not going to be anybody out here to help you.
There's no place on the island is safe. You've got to get off the island.
If you've been asked to evacuate and you ask yourself, should I would ask you to ask the next question. Is it worth the risk?
This is going to be a significant storm.
And that is where we find ABC Action News reporter Lydia Vasquez. She's joining us live. Lydia, you actually found a family who basically took a bunch of branches and tied it to a sign to avoid it, from potentially getting blown around into someone's house or someone's car, becoming a projectile.
Yeah, unfortunately, Heather, that is just the cruel reality that we are facing right now. Hurricane Helene didn't give people much time to kind of get prepared for yet another storm. So thankfully, they are, taking precautions and doing the best that they can, as not everyone can get to that trash as quickly as, we would all like. Right now, I am here at the EOC in Clearwater with the Chief of Police, Eric Gandy. We were talking just a bit ago. You mentioned you were driving around Clearwater Beach. How are we feeling? What does the evacuations what is it looking like here in Clearwater?
So we went right from recovery mode into storm prep mode. And every morning I go out and drive the hardest hit areas, and the same thing every evening to see the progress we've made in the state of the evacuations. Thankfully, this morning, we noticed that quite a few folks who had remained last time were now gone. So I think the really negative experience with Helene has changed people's minds on riding it out.
And the debris, still a major concern. How are we feeling about that here in Clearwater? Like I mentioned, driving around, still some out there.
Oh yeah, there's quite a bit. The debris fields are significant. I've talked to my counterparts in other cities in St. Pete and so on, and they're experiencing the exact same problem. And the danger is that if we get a Cat 4 storm, we haven't had a direct hit like that before, and the wind will pick that debris up and turn it into missiles. I saw people last night before I went home trying to secure that debris in their front yards, covering it with tarps and things, and which in the path of a Cat 4, that's not going to do anything.
Right.
To a non-evac zone, go to one of our shelters, go to a friend's house, but just go someplace, because there will be a point in time when we pull our personnel off the road when it's far too dangerous for them, and there's a window of 6-8 hours where we can't respond to 911 calls to come rescue me.
Right. Chief, thank you so much for your time. And that's an important message for everyone to continue to remember that, they are also having their lives at stake as well. And we want to keep everyone as safe as possible. So please, it seems like it. People are heeding the warnings, but you never want to let your guard down with a storm like this one. So we're going to be in Clearwater giving you guys the latest. But for now, I'm Lydia Vasquez, ABC Action News.
Thank you, Lydia. And again, that window, that time frame to get to a shelter safely is quickly closing. So if you're going to do it, you need to do it right now.
Absolutely. And after the break, we are going to be checking in with our Larissa Scott. She has been in Shore Acres in St. Petersburg. That is an area that is known to flood, but also she is also seeing so much of that debris lining the streets, and no one's coming to get it. So she's been talking about that all morning long. We'll be right back after the break.
Somewhere along Florida's Gulf Coast. Those values could reach upwards of 15 feet across the peninsula. Hurricane force winds going to lead to widespread power outages, heavy rain going to trigger the flash flooding.
And Milton is expected then to track across Florida as a hurricane before it moves into the Atlantic Ocean on Thursday, producing life-threatening storm surge for Florida's East Coast.
Orlando International and the Sanford Airport, they're now closed, suspending commercial operations as of 8 o'clock Eastern. The airports are going to remain open to accept emergency aid and relief flights as necessary. They're joining Tampa International, which closed down yesterday morning. The officials there at the airport in Tampa say that they will reopen when it's safe to do so. Our team coverage continues this morning with reporters, meteorologists, and storm trackers fanned out across Florida as Milton barrels closer to land. Tampa's mayor, Jane Castor, delivering a pretty stark message to residents. Take the evacuation order seriously. Mayor Castor has emphasized the potential dangers of staying in evacuation zones.
Helene was a wake-up call. This is literally catastrophic. And I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
Yeah, so you hear what Mayor Castor is saying there. Tampa police, they were out on the city streets and the suburbs, making sure that residents have gotten out of the areas that are under those mandatory evacuation zones. Let's now head out to Fox Weather's Robert Ray, joining us live from Tampa. It's one of those situations, Robert, as we watch this latest advisory coming in, this is still a Category 4 hurricane as it makes its approach toward Tampa. Still in the cone, there's still some question on where ultimately this will make landfall, and that could have huge implications based on where you're at in Tampa.
Yeah, it sure could. Absolutely, especially for all the waterways here. You see the Garrison Channel behind me that leads into Hillsborough Bay, which then leads into Tampa Bay and then out into the Gulf of Mexico. If indeed the storm decides to wobble and head even a little bit more north and make a landfall, that's a worst case scenario for Tampa. Right now, it's trending just to the south of where we're at. And I want to show you something. If Lloyd just pushes his camera and the lens right across this channel into Tampa General Hospital, and you see in the distance those blue basically storm surge panels. They've been using these for a couple years. I think they were brought upon during Hurricane Ian, and they did a great job during that, stopping the surge coming in. That is a good thing for a hospital that is of that size, and they may need, unfortunately, to be in a very big-time operation in the aftermath of this system. We've got gusty winds that have just begun here in Tampa, and rain falling as I speak right now. The issue, we've been talking about this for days, as Milton is churning out there as a Cat 4 and likely going to make its landfall at some point later tonight into the overnight. All of these barrier islands, and we look at the video from the destruction from Hurricane Helene just less than 2 weeks ago, bringing in storm surge, even though it was a direct hit in these barrier islands here on Tampa. They certainly took a punch as 5 feet plus water moved in, pushing in sand and ripping up the insides of structures. And so all that debris is on the side of roadways, pushed to the side. They were hoping to get most of it removed, and they did get some of it removed. But frankly, you know, like in Bradenton Beach, there are piles everywhere. They just couldn't make it happen because of the mandatory evacs put in by the cities because of Hurricane Milton coming in. And that was smart. They needed to get people out. Unsurvivable. Death could happen, as the mayor of Tampa has been talking about for a couple days. And so all of those debris piles will become essentially projectiles from the wind. They'll be floating 10 to 15 feet of storm surge potentially, and then waves on top of that. You may not see structures at all after this comes into places like Bradenton and other barrier islands. Not to mention down to the south in Fort Myers Beach, where Hurricane Ian tore apart that community, and they've been trying to rebuild, and it's been slow because they continue to get hit by storms, especially in the past 2 months. Debbie with 2 to 4 feet of storm surge that came in. Helene wreaking havoc on them again, and now they could get up to 12 feet of surge. An area that is fatigued and has a lot of, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder because of all of these storms coming in. And so now, guys, we await the system to come in. I equate this to essentially, we know that the enemy is coming. We know. We've known for 2 days. We know that Mother Nature is waging war right now on the coast of Florida, on the Gulf Coast, and we are waiting. And people are in shelters, thousands of them right now. More than 60% of the gas and the fuel is taken out already by people hitting gas stations here in Tampa. There are going to be refueling, but that's not going to happen until after the storm. And there will be multiple communities that are impacted that will go through the worst times in their modern history. There is no question about that. This crew is scouting out to the south of us right now in Sarasota and Venice and Bradenton. Jared Maloney, meteorologist and producers on the ground. We will likely not be here in Tampa for the storm as it comes in tonight. As gusty winds move in, we're going to move down into the eastern eye wall to where that storm is potentially going to come in south of us tonight. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it's a close call. That's what we're seeing. And looking at some of the latest data, this storm is clearly widening out. It's expanding as there are some other interactions at play right now with the front, a dip in the jet. Robert Ray, the threats are still very real there in Tampa Bay. Appreciate the update. Fox Weather's Robert Ray in Tampa for now, but as he had said, going to be moving on. The Gulf of Mexico, what a storyline we've seen this season in the Gulf. It's fueled these Gulf storms, and we've had a lot of them. Millions or Milton, I should say, is the Atlantic's 9th hurricane, and millions are in Milton's path. Category 4, breaking down everything, Marissa, the latest advisory that we have, winds are down just a little bit. We don't want to focus on this because the storm is so close to land, and it was just 12 hours ago, less than 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
This thing was category 5. I think got that energy still.
Yeah, it's just just over 100 miles away, the center to the peninsula of Florida there. You have to talk about weakening in a regard, and using that word lightly, because what's happening is Milton is spreading out. It's getting longer and bigger. That's why it's important to make note. However, it doesn't mean that the surge impacts in particular will be any less than what they've been forecasted. You take a look at what the NHC put out for the 11 a.m. advisory here, Eastern time, by the way. NOAA Air Force Reserve did note that the eye is now opening to the south. So they're seeing some structural changes. The minimum pressure now at 931. So that's another thing. However, it's still a category 4. And when you talk about landfall, even the National Hurricane Center noting, this is still likely to be either a category 3 or 4 during landfall.
Yeah, and when we have this storm as fast as it's moving, 17 miles an hour right now, I mean, we're talking about later this evening, it's going to be dangerously close. I'm looking at which counties, because we've had from Pasco County to Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota counties, these mandatory evacuations. As of the latest forecast, there's not been huge changes. The cone itself is a static cone. This is the same cone that we use for every hurricane this season. It's though getting closer, so it's getting smaller, and it's staying on that course. Where Tampa, it could make a wobble to the north. And I'm telling you, as far as the overall trends that we see, there is growing confidence that maybe we'll see some sort of landfall. Tampa Bay is going to see a significant surge. There's no question about that. But is this a worst case scenario now for just south of Hillsborough County into Manatee and Sarasota? The possibility is there. We've seen these trends this morning, and it seems to be trending that way even still, where the farther south we head, that's where we're going to see this catastrophic storm surge.
We spoke to the sheriff out of Manatee County, which has Anna Maria, which has Bradenton, which had an immense storm surge that really destroyed a lot of the homes in those communities. You have mandatory evacuations there. And I think it's also really important to note, because the wording from the National Hurricane Center is really important. And every discussion they have is catered to the imminent threats that we're going to be seeing. And even they say, we'd like to emphasize that the exact landfall location is not possible to predict even at this time, particularly if the hurricane wobbles during the day and into this evening. Even if at 12 to 24 hours, the track forecast can be off on average of 20 to 30 nautical miles, so about 40 miles at, as you said, 20 to the north, 20 to the south. And it's those fine details that go into the surge forecast.
Well, and we consider that we're still more than 12 hours away from landfall from a timing perspective. And I mean, we'll have coverage all morning long, and into the overnight hours tonight too. Depending on if this thing drifts to the north, obviously it's the south side of the hurricane of Milton that's going to bring in that catastrophic storm surge. If this thing continues to trend farther to the south, then maybe we see a portion of Tampa Bay in the clear, but we'll still deal with a destructive storm surge potentially. It's all about how those winds flow. Matthew Blue had even mentioned it when we're looking at Pinellas County. We could have a significant surge on the east coast, the east side of Pinellas County, that's facing the Tampa Bay as the winds rotate around. So any sort of slight fluctuation is going to be significant. Obviously, the evacuation zones, and we heard from the Tampa mayor, have been making rounds that talking about the threats and dangers that we have specifically still to Tampa.
Yeah, just going through historic surge, record surge out of Helene, and this could be worse. Storm surge is very sensitive to the exact path and landfall point. I think the other interesting thing, and this is something that you've been talking about all morning, is that boundary that we have draped over the peninsula and that interaction that we have with a lot of the tropical moisture as well as the jet stream. But pointing out, typically we look at the right front quadrant, so the southern side of the hurricane. But with interaction with that boundary in that front, you could actually see some very strong wind gusts in areas north of Milton.
Yeah, we've seen actually today play out. In fact, with this latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, they talked about tornadic supercells already being generated because of Milton. We've seen confirmed tornadoes play out through south central Florida. That's because we've got this interaction today where more than just Milton, but Milton's obviously the big culprit here, that this could be a dangerous day from a severe weather threat.
Yeah.
The farther north we head and the closer to that boundary that we get, keep in mind, we're still sitting pretty warm and muggy along the Atlantic-facing coast. We're talking to Michael Estime, who's north of St. Augustine. He's in Jacksonville. A 70-degree dew point, 80-degree temperature this morning. It's warm. It's muggy there.
And already a flash flood warning.
Yep.
Also, the thing to remember is if you're waking up today and you haven't checked in terms of some of the details here, the rain forecast totals in the Tampa Bay area going up to 18 inches, which is 1.5 feet. But areas all the way towards Jacksonville, St. Augustine could also see about 1 foot of rain because already you're seeing some probably intense rainfall rates over St. Augustine. So that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah, think of what Debbie did with the rain for Tampa, because there were it was east of downtown Tampa, but we saw 15 to 20 inches of rain.
Right.
The same sheriff that we talked to out of Manatee County mentioning how several homes were damaged because of floodwaters in eastern parts of Manatee County. So we have that rain threat, but then you're also dealing with the possible destructive nature of the storm surge.
Watching where those heavy pockets set up, St. Augustine, another 5 to 8 inches still to come, maybe a little bit less towards Jacksonville. We'll watch. We're watching every corner, every crevice of Florida for you, and we're with you for the long run, all in the hours leading up to Hurricane Milton's landfall as we continue through today.
We are bracing and are prepared to receive a major hit. We're facing this with the seriousness it deserves, but also with the determination that we will get through this.
And as Governor Ron Desantis of Florida sounding that alarm hours before Milton's landfall, Milton is expected to hit Florida late tonight into tomorrow morning. This is a look at some of those locations across Florida that are going to be dealing with these impacts, some worse than others. Either way, it's going to be tough to go unscathed by Milton. The effects of Milton will go from coast to coast. It's expected to go across the peninsula as a hurricane. More on Milton coming up after the break.
Update from Mayor Ken Welch here in just under an hour at noon. But the biggest message, if you live in any of those areas I mentioned, the residents were notified yesterday. The city staff says they were out and about telling people in the area, posting those signs of businesses, that if you haven't gotten out, if you get out now safely, get out now. If not, go to an inner room while the storm passes without windows, just in case these cranes malfunction. Of course, we know there's a lot of development going on in and around St. Pete, and these cranes pose just another safety concern that officials here are worried about. I do want to give you one other mention for Pinellas County overall, a message we just got in from county officials. 3 Pinellas County shelters are now at capacity. Those are Largo High School, Leelman Innovation Academy, and Palm Harbor University Building 19. There are still shelters available, though. County officials want you to know 11 shelters are still accepting people, but the time is now, as you keep hearing, to go to those shelters and evacuate if you plan to. Guys, back to you.
Some good information there. And yeah, we are standing by waiting to hear from the Pinellas Emergency Operations Center, so hopefully we can ask them some more questions about those shelters. Keely Tracy reporting for us. Thank you.
Yeah, the power of wind and storms. We were talking about it earlier. I remember that crane that was bent like a wire hanger from Superstorm Sandy in New York City. I mean, it doesn't take much for those cranes to become dangerous. To our north, Pasco County, not out of the woods yet.
And Charlie Belcher's at the Emergency Operations Center, where officials are monitoring Milton's movements. Hey, Charlie, good morning.
Good day to you, Jennifer. Yeah, excuse me, absolutely. Level 1, as they say at the Emergency Operations Center, means all hands on deck, basically, and they're on a 24 on, 24 off schedule right now, and there's representatives from all different municipalities that make up the county, as well as utilities and different services. And they are all literally plugged in, going through briefings and Zooms meetings with Tallahassee, and just want to make sure the messaging is correct right now, and want to make sure they're in the right place to render aid when it is necessary. Just a couple of weeks ago, Hurricane Helene, with that massive storm surge, we were here when they were doing water rescues over off Hudson Beach and up and down west of 19 throughout Pasco County. They know they're going to have to do that again. And I know that that landfall has shifted to the south, but it's such a big storm. There's going to be so much rain falling. There's going to be definite high winds. There's going to be localized flooding. The messaging here has not changed. Andrew Fossa, Emergency Management Director, says the message is the same.
Evacuate. We're still going to get surge from this storm, but now we're going to get wind. So these damaged mobile homes, these damaged structures, they're not going to be safe to stay in. Please heed our warning. Use Go Pasco. Use Uber. It's a free ride from both of them. Get you to a shelter and be safe.
At what time is that too dangerous to do? At what point have you waited too late to evacuate?
So I'm thinking around between 4 and 5 today. We're going to start seeing winds and bands come through. And when that happens, Go Pasco stops working. Uber is going to probably shut down. And the citizens that did not evacuate are going to be stuck in their residence.
So you see right now, I mean, the weather will continue to deteriorate. Little rain right now, little breezy, gusty. So if you did have to make that last minute decision, now is the time to do it. They're especially worried about people in mobile home parks. A lot of mobile home parks in Pasco County. And they're just worried about them withstanding the winds and the rain and the localized flooding that's going to happen. So if you're in one of those areas and you know where you live, you know what happens there. If you're on the fence at all, definitely go to a friend's house on higher ground or go to one of the shelters that they have open here. I will tell you that all of the shelters in Pasco County are pet friendly. Now that does mean dogs and cats. That doesn't, hamsters and exotic pets and stuff like that. And that's an argument for another time, but the rules are the rules, and it's dogs and cats. But they will all accept dogs and cats. And we've got more than 4,000 people already in shelters throughout Pasco County. If you've got to get there, now is the time. Sandbag locations are closing at noon. So, I mean, we're at a little after 11:20. I mean, if you haven't done that by now, you've got a half an hour, not much time left, really, to be honest. Hopefully, your plans are in place. You are where you're going to be to ride out this storm. And don't let that shift to the south give you a look. Can you be relieved that it's not going to come in Newport Richey off the coast? Yes. We now know landfall will not be Pasco County. Whew. But that doesn't mean we're not going to see some life-threatening issues because of downed trees, localized flooding, all this rain, and all the other issues. And yes, we are one big Tampa Bay area. It doesn't hit one neighbor, it hits another. So that's kind of the feeling here in Pasco County right now.
Now, for those folks who do decide to stay, it's important for them to remember that, there's a period of time when emergency crews cannot get out to them, once those sustained winds hit, I think it's 40 miles per hour. 100%
correct. When those winds reach 40 miles an hour, and that's a tropical force storm gusts and winds can be that. They're not rolling out. They're not going to do it. And this is going to be so windy and so rainy for such an intense amount of time. You're not going to be able to get help during that period of time. You're truly going to be on your own. So just leave if you can. Just leave.
Yeah, make the right decision now.
It's dangerous if you don't.
Yeah. All right, Charlie. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Okay. All right, conditions maybe look a little bit favorable in Pasco County, but to the south, Pinellas County, it's a waiting game to see Milton's impacts on the coast.
Yeah, the barrier islands and Pinellas closed last night, and once the winds pick up and the water starts trickling onto the bridges, they will close. And we're joined now by David Connor, the Public Information Manager for Pinellas County. So, David, first off, we do know shelters were open this morning, but we are getting word that some shelters are at capacity now.
Yeah, that's correct. As of right now, we have 11 shelters open, and 3 of our shelters are full. The shelters at the Largo High Lellman Innovation Center, and one of the 2 shelters at the Palm Harbor University are full, specifically the special needs shelter. So we do have a lot of capacity. We only have about 8,000 people in our shelters, and we have room for about 24,000 people. So there is still space for the folks who need it.
That's got to make you feel pretty good that people are listening to the evacuation orders.
You know, I'm really grateful. I've had teams going out into the field all week, meeting with residents in some of those coastal communities that are at risk, mobile home parks, and we're seeing a lot of people who have made the choice to leave, which is a smart choice given what the storm can do. What I'm most worried about right now is those people who may think, oh, I'm in a zone B and I didn't see anything from Helene, so I'm fine. That's a mistake, and those folks and those areas are in danger.
And we were just talking to our Charlie Belcher about the fact that there's going to be a period of when the winds do pick up and when it's just not safe for even emergency crews to come out and help you. So there's going to be that time that now is the time to evacuate, because if you're one of those people who choose to stay, help might not be out there for you.
That is absolutely true. You know, our emergency response crews and our county crews have been continuously at work for the past 2 weeks. And they're ready. You know, they're as ready as they can be for this storm. But we're asking people to give them a break and do the right thing now. Evacuate, even though it doesn't feel good. It's still better than the alternative. It's safer for you, and it's safer for our first responders.
David, how are you guys looking as far as storm debris? I know that was a big effort. In fact, on my way to work, I saw a big caravan of dump trucks coming over to Howard Franklin. I got out of the way on 275, letting them do their thing. Did you guys make a dent at all?
You know, there was a pretty broad multi-team effort to address the debris throughout the impacted areas of Pinellas County. We were working with state partners, the Florida National Guard and the Florida Department of Transportation was down here. We were working with contractors, with the municipalities. We even cross-trained our public works field teams to go out and haul debris. That's not typically their job, but they got in the business to help. I think we did move a lot of debris. We certainly did not address the entirety of the problem, just because there was so much debris generated, and it was kind of unprecedented to think it could be picked up in a week. But I'm proud of the work we did. You know, there is going to be more out there, and there's certainly going to be more generated by this storm. And what I can tell you is our teams are ready, and all those partners we work with are ready. Once this storm clears the area and we get that all clear, we're going to be out there and try to take care of any new debris and any remaining debris.
And this might not be your area of expertise, but the bridges, as far as evacuations go, I'm monitoring them on the traffic side, and I know FDOT and FHP is as well. But I guess now is the time, if you do want to evacuate out of Pinellas County, to do so before those bridges close.
Absolutely. The Florida Department of Transportation and the Florida Highway Patrol have all announced that they do plan to close those bridges this afternoon. The criteria are a little different depending on what bridge we're talking about. You know, the Skyway shuts down when the sustained winds, I think, are 40 miles an hour or greater. The Courtney Campbell Causeway, that Howard Franklin shut down when there's a substantial amount of water on the roadway. And you're right, it all plays into the same thing. And this is something I want to emphasize. A lot of people, or there are some people who are still watching the storm, waiting for that next forecast, waiting for the next wobble. That's a mistake. We know what the storm is going to do. We don't know the exact details, but we know the threat. And if you're subject to that threat, whether it's because you're in an evacuation zone or you're in a structure that you feel is unsafe in the hurricane force winds we're expecting, this is the time to go. Don't wait for it to get better, because it's not. Just get out.
And David, before we let you go, I do want to touch on this, because we spoke with the folks from Treasure Island earlier this week. Gulfport, St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, Reddington Shores, all of those beach communities, those barrier islands, those people are exhausted. Yeah. Can you speak? How are they doing?
You know, I think the good news is that right now, how they're doing is that they are getting out. They are evacuating from those impacted areas. We have a lot of empathy. We have many members of our staff live in those areas. I live in Gulfport. I'm lucky that my house was spared in the last storm. But we acknowledge that we have months of work ahead of us in conjunction with those municipalities, and we're here for it.
Well, we thank you for all that you're doing and all that you guys will do before and after the storm, and for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah.
Thanks. And one last thing I'd like to add. Now is a great time to sign up for Alert Pinellas, because we're going to keep using that to get in touch with people after the storm, to share recovery resources, and it's by text. So even if there are cell phone outages, it's a good way to get information.
Nice.
All right, David.
All right, David. We'll talk to you later on. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And that information about the 3 new shelters that opened up, we'll put that on our website, foster13news.com, if it's not already on there, the county by county.
Good information.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim.
Hey there. I know we got another press conference coming up. We're gonna cover some stuff until we get to that point, and then we'll toss to that. But we're now at this point where basically a lot of the forecasting it's done with this. It's a lot of nowcasting. We're watching this satellite. We're watching the radar with this. Hurricane reconnaissance. They're flying in this system pretty much nonstop. So you look at this right now, and as the loop goes on, what you notice is the beginning part. You have that eye, and then you see the eye just going away. It's being obscured. And it's still there, but it's harder to see in these infrared satellite images. But what we're finding out from the hurricane reconnaissance plane, the eye is now open. That's an indication that the wind shear and the dry air that we've been counting on so much is really starting to affect this system. And you can see that how this is really being pulled. You're seeing all the clouds racing on to the north and the east with this. But even with the weakening that we've been talking about, that we're going to see with this is still going to be really the strongest thing that we have seen along our coast in over a century. So right now, you do look at that strong band of rain right along the coastline. We're going to continue to watch this line right through here working its way on shore. And what we're seeing in this is as we flip over and look at the velocity, you see those brighter green colors in there. And what we're really looking at, we're seeing some spin, especially down towards just off the coast of, say, Bonita Springs, over towards Cape Coral as well. And what the issue is as these start to work their way on shore and quickly move to the north and the northwest, up into our area, we are likely going to start to see some of these, what we have now, I have water spouts becoming tornadoes moving on shore. We've had a number of confirmed tornadoes already across Alligator Alley. You can see these are now working their way to the north. So some of our southern counties in the inland areas, over towards Highlands County, over towards Arcadia, you're going to be watching over the next, say, hour to hour and a half for some of these cells that have been very, very potent, working their way up to the north and the northwest. And then some of that could produce a quick tornado as well. And these tornadoes, they can be very violent and they are extremely fast moving as well. So that is the issue with so many of these. Now, as we look further on to the north throughout Manatee County, into Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, and then points north, you're still seeing that whole shield of rain. So since early this morning, we've had some very heavy rain at times coming down. And these rainfall totals, as we go through the day into tonight and through early tomorrow, they will really start to pile up. And that will become more and more of an issue as we go through late tonight and into tomorrow, where many of our northern counties, even though you're on that what we quote unquote call the weaker side of the storm, you're still going to feel the effects. You're going to feel a lot of these effects, and you're also going to have more than likely the heaviest rainfall from this, where some of these areas in a corridor, let's kind of highlight the area that we're talking about, from portions of Pinellas County all the way along I-4 and to our north. We could be looking at 6 to 12 inches of rain, with some areas getting up to 18 inches of rain. That will cause a big flash flooding issue as well. But as we just continue to watch more of these bands working their way closer to the coastline, that's my immediate concern right now. And remember, this is well in advance of the actual center of the storm, before those winds really start to ramp up later on this afternoon and into this evening. This is that confirmed tornado that moved across Alligator Alley earlier this morning. You can see it there, very terrifying. And we've had a number of these working their way inland, and we will likely see more things like this as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So the 11 a.m. advisory came out. Good news is we are seeing that weakening trend. So now the winds are down to 145 miles an hour. And it's just amazing that we're excited to see 145 in a weakening trend such as that, just because this has just been such an intense hurricane. But it will continue to weaken a bit more prior to landfall, but that doesn't change the storm surge threat with this. From the center into the right of where this makes storm surge, that will still be a huge concern. And then we will still see basically a major hurricane making landfall late tonight and into early tomorrow, right along the coastline as it works its way somewhere between Manatee and Sarasota. You see where that cone is right now. That does not mean if you're outside of this cone, if you're up in the, say, northern Hillsborough County, and you're saying, hey, look at this, we're out of the cone, we're good. You're not good at all. This is just about where that actual center is expected to move onshore. The effects, they extend well outside of this. So essentially everyone in our viewing area is going to have the effects of this storm. It's just to what extent. So to talk more about some of what we're going to see throughout the rest of the afternoon and into this evening, Valerie Mills is standing by. Valerie?
Yeah, and so we're going to jump right into looking at our storm surge forecast, because obviously we have seen a change for Tampa Bay areas to the north, and it's important to kind of factor in here. If this landfall does occur to the south of Tampa Bay, these are not going to come out to play. So overall, it's where this comes ashore and to the south. And so these numbers are painting the scenario of where this landfall could occur. So if it does take that slight jog more to the north, we are in this threshold here of 8 to 12 feet of surge. But if it goes to the south of us, we are not going to see numbers quite that high. We are still going to get some storm surge. I think we'll be close enough to the eye either way where that is going to cause some problems, but it's really just kind of to the south into Sarasota and furthermore into kind of the Port Charlotte areas where we're looking at the maximum storm surge to be possible. But here we're taking kind of a closer look here at parts of Hillsborough and Tampa Bay. And these are the kind of the legend numbers to pay attention to. The red color showing the potential for up to 12 feet. And we talk about this orange color kind of showing up to 9 feet. And so with this onshore push of some of these winds still pumping into the bay, we do still expect this water to make it onshore into parts of these areas, say from Piney Point up to Ruskin, Apollo Beach, Gibsonton. All of those areas along the coast are in the threat zone, especially for parts of South Tampa down to the McDill area. You can see some of those brighter colors there, but we're not kind of in that widespread red color where we would be talking about some of those extreme worst case scenarios. But another area that we're concerned about, parts of Pinellas actually on the east side. You think about these winds potentially kind of moving east to west. And so there will be some of those onshore push of the winds for some of these areas, say down to St. Pete area. So those are some of kind of the micro wind speeds that we'll be focusing in on from Feather Sound down to down St. Pete. That'll be an area that will likely get some of that onshore push of the winds as well. But as we take this further south, look at how much more aggressive things are looking. It's right from Anna Maria down to Holmes Beach, Bradenton Beach. You can see Cortez, Bayshore Gardens, and right on into Longboat Key. I mean, these barrier islands, a major threat. If we do see the storm surge coming on shore, I mean, you can see how much of Longboat Key right on down to Lido Key and Siesta Key. Pretty much we're seeing all of these widespread red orange colors there, even right around St. Armand Circle and into parts of Sarasota. A very high threat area with the latest shift that we have seen in that track, taking it just a bit farther to the south. So that puts some of these areas and furthermore to the south under that high threat zone that we're talking about. And as far as when this storm comes on shore, what we don't want is for it to time out with the high tide cycle. And unfortunately, we are going to be pretty close to that. Look at Bradenton, Anna Maria, expecting that high tide, focusing on the bottom one. That is 3:37 a.m. That is very close to when we're eyeing in on that landfall time frame. It likely is going to occur maybe 1, 2 o'clock Thursday morning. And so that tide cycle is going to be on its way to a high tide. And when we talk about the worst case scenarios, that is the upper end of that storm surge forecast to account for high tide to factor in. So not a good situation there. But, you know, as we kind of look at our wind threat, we're also seeing that reflected. Yesterday, we had these bright pink colors showing the absolute highest wind speeds right across all of downtown Tampa, further up into parts of our northern counties. But now that threat includes part of Pinellas, St. Pete, right on down to Sarasota, and furthermore into the Fort Myers area. So with this storm coming on shore, in theory, in these areas, it's going to be kind of a radius around that eye wall where the maximum wind speeds will be. But then as this kind of crosses right across central Florida, all of this red color, that is a threat zone for some very extreme winds. These are going to certainly knock down trees. We're talking about widespread power outages to be a big concern. And we look closer at the forecasted wind speeds. You can clearly see why. By 4 o'clock, Clearwater, St. Pete, we're starting to see those gusts upwards to that 60, 70 mile per hour range, and even inland, Polk County, Highlands County, 40, 50 mile per hour gusts starting, and then they just continue to ramp up. We get closer to that 10, 11 o'clock time frame, and look at that, down just south of Sarasota, Venice area, seeing those wind gusts up to that 80, 90 mile per hour range, up to 80 for Clearwater as well. Tampa in that 50, 60 mile per hour threshold, and then these winds will just continue to kind of roar on and off with these very powerful gusts right on through the Thursday morning hour time frame. And then you can kind of see where this general area of spin is. And so we're talking these impacts to be felt for many areas that are even outside of the cone and outside of the direct path of where Milton is going to come on shore. As for our rain outlook, Jim was already mentioning it, highlighting that area on the map where we expect the worst of the rainfall. And yeah, you can really kind of see where we anticipate. Generally, the storm is going to have the heaviest rain right on the north side of it. So now that we're seeing that shift maybe a little bit more to the south, that certainly puts areas around Tampa right on across to the Space Coast, Daytona Beach, in that potential for up to 18 inches of rainfall. So flash flooding is going to be a big concern, and we'll continue to watch for that as well. But this storm starting to encounter all of that wind shear, and you can really see it kind of tearing apart the north side of this storm. And so further weakening is expected to continue, but that is not really going to make a big change in the impacts that we are continuing to drive home. So if we see any subtle change in the track, we will continue to tweak these overall storm surge numbers, but the big picture is certainly there. We've got 2 Hurricane Hunter flights. One of them, I think, just wrapped up their flight, but another one in the midst of it right now. So we will continue to get more of this information. And of course, we'll be with you through it all, more updates to come. Jen, Walter.
And we knew this was going to happen, Val. Just didn't think it would happen so soon. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge is officially shut down. FHP and FDOT worked together to close the bridge just after 11 o'clock this morning, which means they anticipate that the wind speeds will pick up to 45 miles per hour, if not already. So the Sunshine Skyway Bridge is closed. That is just one evacuation route that is no longer accessible to take, which is why we've been telling people all morning, even yesterday and the day before, to leave if you are in an evacuation zone, because time is officially running out. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge is now closed. The rest of the Bay Area bridges are open, at least for now. A live look outside along the Howard Franklin Bridge. We spoke with the Pinellas County EOC officials earlier this morning, and they reminded us that they are monitoring the bridges with FHP and FDOT. Once it gets a little too windy or water starts to pool up on the bridges and makes it unsafe for drivers to use it, they are going to shut those down soon, and we expect that to happen by mid-afternoon. But again, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge is now closed. And, you know, once Milton does make landfall, it's going to move inland pretty quickly, eventually crossing the state.
The winds are picking up now. We expected probably another 14 hours before it makes landfall, but it's already picking up. Polk County preparing for a lot of rain and strong gusts. Fox 13's Craig Patrick is there live this morning. Craig, good morning.
Good morning, Walter. Yeah, the gusts have picked up, not significant at this point, maybe 10 miles an hour or so. Unfortunately, we know that's going to change, and those winds will intensify in the coming hours, especially after lunch. By the way, the last hour, we showed you where you could still get gas, the few remaining places that had what was left. That ship has now sailed, and with it, you have ultimately all the gas stations being depleted at this point, with plans to replenish perhaps on Friday. At least that's the plan. Meanwhile, take a look around me. This is where we're seeing some changes now. You're seeing a good number of cars pull into this parking lot really within the past couple of hours, and there's a reason for that. This happens to be a cluster of hotels on the south side of Lakeland Highlands, just off the Polk Parkway. And as we walk through the parking lot, we see an awful lot of plates from Sarasota, Manatee counties, and Pinellas County as well. A number of people who actually weathered Helene, realizing that they should have evacuated and did not, and that taught them a very poignant lesson for what they're facing with Milton, including people like Lisa Schaubnecht.
Well, we sandbagged. I had everything set up, and the sandbags did not work. The water just, you couldn't stop it from coming in. And then when I was walking in waist high water in my house, I got really nervous. So this time I said, you know, I lost everything on the first round. So it's, you know, I just didn't think it was a good option to stay.
So you booked this room in Lakeland?
Yes, I did. I've been here since Sunday. My sisters have been here with us. We're just making the best.
Which is certainly a wise move. And when you work through Polk County, as we did, driving for more than an hour through side streets, commercial strips, and districts, you see business after business, restaurant after restaurant has wisely closed at this point. Gas stations, convenience stores have closed or in the process of closing so that their employees can get home safely. Although, Polk County is not expecting damage from surge that we're going to see along the coast somewhere. They recognize that we're looking at wind gusts and sustained winds, perhaps of more than 100 miles per hour. You're looking at more than 12 inches, perhaps, maybe 18 inches of rainfall, which could cause flooding. So if you live in an area that is prone to flooding, it would be a wise idea to move elsewhere, perhaps with a friend or family member. If you're looking for a hotel at this point, you're not going to find one, at least not in Polk County. That's why there are 19 different shelters that are open in Polk County. There is plenty of capacity right now. There are around 2,800 people staying in them. They can hold thousands more. Unlike Pasco County that Charlie was mentioning earlier, not all of them are pet friendly, but 3 of them are pet friendly, including Haines City High School, Lake Region High School, and Tinner Rock High School as well. You also have 3 special needs shelters. Having said that, if you need to go to a shelter, if you don't have a better alternative, go now, because the window in which you can safely leave is rapidly closing. Emergency management officials are stressing that they do have capacity if needed, but they're also expecting very intense weather, a big change from this lull in the rain we're currently seeing in these gusts of 10 miles an hour to much more to come this afternoon, and then what would be clearly undrivable as we approach the evening hours.
And Craig, great to mention again, if you do not want to go to a shelter, but you are looking to get and evacuate out, visit florida.com/Priceline. Hopefully you'll be able to find a hotel there, like you mentioned, not in Polk County, but maybe if you're willing to drive a little bit further. But you need to go now.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right, Walter.
All right, Craig Patcher live for us this morning. We'll talk to you later on. Thank you. We continue our team coverage.
Thank you.
It looks like we're going to go to the mayor, I believe, of City of Tampa, Jane Castor. Is that right?
Through the messaging communication, FDOT is going to be closing the major bridges later this afternoon, actually probably sooner rather than later. And so those individuals that are making those last minute preparations, put a move on it and go ahead and get out of those events.
It's 2024, and you're still using the same cable network? Frontier Fiber is here, right now, for you. 25 times faster uploads than cable. 100% fiber internet, powered by the speed of light. Get our best deal. Switch now for just $29.99 per month. Get free premium Wi-Fi and free expert installation. Frontier Fiber, good to go.
You know what's nice about having Farrah and Farrah work on your injury case? We put in the hard work so you can take it easy. Farrah and Farrah, here to make it easy.
Storm surge here from 12 to 15 feet. That is something that is historical, not only for our community, but really for our nation. So we just can't, we have no other way of underscoring the severity of that storm surge. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your loved ones as well. We have had enough advanced warning that we should not have any deaths as a result of this storm. Neighbors help neighbors. We have transportation solutions. If you can't get out of a certain area, we can send someone to get you. The Tampa Police Department this morning just saved Lieutenant Dan. He has been rescued and he is now in a shelter as well. So if we can get Lieutenant Dan to go to a shelter, we can get anybody to do that. So please, 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 we have open shelters. We have transportation. We have what you need to get out of harm's way. You just need to take that step. We are prepared here. Our solid waste is still picking up that road debris. We're not going to be able to get, household debris. We're not going to be able to get to all of it, but they have picked up probably 70 to 80% of it. And just to put it in perspective, they have done in 2 weeks what normally takes 3 months or more to get done. So they are out there in this weather doing what they can all the way up to the last minute. And I believe it was 26,000 cubic yards of debris. So doing their best on that. As I said, they're going to stop with the collections today. Sandbag sites locations are closed. The city garages, again, we're leaving those open. You don't have much time if you don't do it in the next hour or so. You can put your electric vehicles up high. Make sure you are elevating all those electric batteries, electric items as well, because you know those batteries, once they start on fire, they cannot be extinguished. And we lost a lot of houses in the last storm based on that. So thank you all. I have never seen an evacuation of this magnitude, and our community has responded and responded very, very responsibly. So thank you for that. We are prepared for the storm. Worst case scenario is it is a bit north of the Tampa Bay area. Best case scenario is it is a bit south, but that is still not a good scenario. This is going to be a storm of historic proportions with wind, water, and rain. But we will get through this together, and we will come back stronger. Now I'd like to have comments from the chair of City Council, Guido Maniscalco.
Yeah, we're going to take it back from here because, and we want to thank the mayor and everything they're doing in Hillsborough County as well, because we have our first tornado warning of the day, and this is coming in a place that we've already had a confirmed tornado, Jim. So this is heading into Highlands County.
Yeah, we've watched a number of these cells working their way down to our south across Alligator Alley, a number of confirmed tornado warnings. And you can see this area that we're talking about. This is now working its way into southern Highlands County. So just putting some of the cities across central and southern Highlands County. This is moving to the northwest very quickly, 35 miles an hour. This is a radar indicated. We did have a signature in here and earlier of a confirmed tornado. So if you're in this area down across central and southern Highlands County inside this warning, essentially from Lake Placid to the south, you want to go to that safe location in your house, because we do have a storm and a tornado that has been confirmed earlier that is working its way up in this direction. And this is very quick moving. You flip over and you look at the reflectivity, and you can really see that hook in there as well, which
and
is
those
disturbing.
towns that Jim put there in the bottom left, that gives you how many minutes until, if this thing is on the ground, if it holds together, it's going to get to you. So again, we're talking about Highlands County now. This is just the first of what honestly we believe is going to be a lot. It'll be a lot of tornado warnings. There's another one in Charlotte County as well, and that's encompassing that huge area of rain that we've been showing you pushing on shore. And it wouldn't surprise me, Jim, as that moves northward, if that doesn't start to impact Sarasota County with warnings as well.
Yeah, I really do think that we're going to see more and more of these warnings. And this is something I know you and Valerie have been talking about this through the morning. We've been watching this line, this very intense line. If you go out a little bit wider on this, you can see how it is just that one of these spiral bands that's just going to continue to work its way on shore. So places like Sarasota County, I mean, it could be really in the next 20, 30 minutes that we start to see some of this activity working its way along there. And this is all well in advance of the really strong winds that we're going to see later on today. But we have that threat right now, the immediate threat of these bands, these outer bands that work their way through, and you get these quick spin up tornadoes, and it's going to be just a really bad afternoon, it looks like.
I don't think I've ever seen a tornado warning on the east side of Lake Okeechobee and then another one on the west side of Lake Okeechobee. But there is the case. You have two distinct tornadoes, one on either side of the lake. The atmosphere and the way that it's all spinning, it's very violent right now. And that type of atmosphere is moving up to the north, which is why we're beginning to get the warnings in Highlands County and then Hardy County, DeSoto County. Well, you don't have any warnings yet. we're likely to see these as they continue to move to the north. It's a multifaceted storm, and I know we've been focusing on landfall, storm surge, but before we get to that, we've got these tornadoes, which are initially kind of kicking off the whole event, I think, for the area.
Yeah, and we just continue to see when we look at that, what we call the rotation detector, we're definitely seeing a very definite signature of a rotation with this cell, and it just, with it moving so quickly onto the north, this is gonna be something that gets here really before you know it. And so if you're in these central into the middle of the house on that lowest level.
And this is what I want. People are probably saying, well, you know, a lot of times you guys don't, you see these tornadoes, the radar indicates them, but they're not there. Well, listen, folks, that was from earlier, maybe an hour ago in Palm Beach County. That is a confirmed tornado. Those are the types of tornadoes that this has been producing so far this morning. And I just wanted you to realize that when we tell you there's a tornado warning for Highlands County, folks, and it could look potentially something like that, I need you to get into the interior room, Jim.
And this was from a cluster, the same cluster of cells that we've been watching. So all these cells that were down across Alligator Alley that confirmed tornadoes down there, these are the same ones that are now moving up into our southern portions of our viewing area. I want to go ahead and just talk about some tornado safety really quickly here, just to give you an idea of where you want to be inside your house. So you want to go away from those. You want to go towards the interior location, avoid the windows in your house. So this is highlighted with that bathroom. So that's a really good place, right towards the center of your house in that lowest spot in your house.
For most people, that's a bathroom.
Yes.
It really is. And if it's a closet, I'm sure that it's probably not cleaned it out enough for you to get in there. But for typically, yes, it is that interior room that we're looking for. You know, as Jim is bringing that radar back out, that vicious line of rain from Bradenton all the way down through Bonita Springs, there was no doubt there's got to be some 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts in there, okay? So the onset of the tropical storm force winds arriving now. The Sunshine Skyway is closed. Jim, we've got tornado warnings. It's all beginning to ramp up.
Yeah, and again, we've got this tornado warning for Highlands County. That goes until 12:30. Just so you know the timing on this, quite likely this could be extended. So if you're say into northern and up in northern Highlands County into portions of say southern Polk County, you're not under a warning right now, but that is certainly something that you want to be watching if you're in these areas as we go through the next hour or so. But right along the coastline, even though Sarasota County down into Manatee County, you don't have any active tornado warnings, I want you to be careful at this point. This is not a point to be outside or really be venturing out at any point, because these strong bands have now worked their way into the area, and any one of these could really very quickly spin up a tornado. So you don't want to put yourself in harm's way by being too far away from your safe location.
That whole area that Jim has circled in the white, that oval, that in any one of those particular bands, cells, could be rotating. And that's what the big concern is. We saw them rotating when they were sitting out over the Gulf. So some of them are, and some of them have been, and that's why these tornado warnings are being issued. And again, all of this and that incredibly unstable atmosphere is lifting northward. And eventually it's going to get into Hardy County and Northern Highlands, and then eventually into Polk County as well.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is still, I mean, these are those bands, because as you measure where the actual center of the storm is, just off the coast, let's measure this, say from about Sarasota. We are looking, this is still 135 miles away. So these are those bands that are working their way through. And we're just starting to see more and more of the frequency of these bands working their way through. Sarasota down towards Cape Coral, Bonita Springs, that's where you see down towards Naples. That's where you're seeing already a number of tornado warnings. And then we've had those confirmed tornado warnings into the middle portion.
I'm going to do a little calculation. Yeah. You keep talking. Keep talking. Okay, here we go.
That's what we call team effort here. So in the Highlands County, just once again, I want to kind of zoom in. We'll take a quick look here to see how this cell looks. And what you're really seeing here when we look at this, as I clear some of this off so we can get a better look at this, it looks like we've got yet another warning coming out just to the south of Highlands County, down into Glades County. It looks
Voluntary evacuation in portions of Duval County, not mandatory, but those in mandatory evacuation zones being told to get out. Fox Weather's continuing coverage of Hurricane Milton will guide you as the storm approaches Florida's Gulf Coast.
We're going to see impacts like we've never seen before here in Tampa Bay. And I want to caution everybody, to be safe once we get through the storm.
Some locations may be uninhabitable for an extended period. And again, that's why you're being asked to leave.
The ceiling in this room we're in right now is 10 foot 8 inches. So another 5 feet above that, that is certainly not survivable.
There's not going to be anybody out here to help you.
There's no place on the island is safe. You've got to get off the island.
If you've been asked to evacuate and you ask yourself, should I would ask you to ask the next question. Is it worth the risk?
This is going to be a significant storm.
A press conference with the city of Tampa now.
Probably sooner rather than later. And so those individuals that are making those last minute preparations, put a move on it and go ahead and get out of those evacuation areas. We did have an incredibly high demand on gasoline, but the port has been refilling those gas stations as quickly as possible. Some of the gas stations were empty in my neighborhood last night, and they were all open again this morning. And so you should be able to get fuel to get out of town. The roads look pretty clear right now. You don't have to go far, as we have said before. You just have to get out of the way of that storm surge. That storm surge is still the biggest issue that we're looking at. Any of you who went through Hurricane Helene, that was 4 to 6 feet, and that was more devastation than I've seen in my life. So Milton is bringing the possibility of bringing twice as much storm surge here, from 12 to 15 feet. That is something that is historical, not only for our community, but really for our nation. So we just can't, we have no other way of underscoring the severity of that storm surge. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your loved ones as well. We have had enough advanced warning that we should not have any deaths as a result of this storm. Neighbors help neighbors. We have transportation solutions. If you can't get out of a certain area, we can send someone to get you. The Tampa Police Department this morning just saved Lieutenant Dan. He has been rescued and he is now in a shelter as well. So if we can get Lieutenant Dan to go to a shelter, we can get anybody to do that. So please, 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 we have open shelters. We have transportation. We have what you need to get out of harm's way. You just need to take that step. We are prepared here. Our solid waste is still picking up that road debris. We're not going to be able to get, household debris. We're not going to be able to get to all of it, but they have picked up probably 70 to 80% of it. And just to put it in perspective, they have done in 2 weeks what normally takes 3 months or more to get done. So they are out there in this weather doing what they can all the way up to the last minute. And I believe it was 26 1,000 cubic yards of debris. So doing their best on that. As I said, they're going to stop with the collections today. Sandbag sites locations are closed. The city garages, again, we're leaving those open. You don't have much time. If you don't do it in the next hour or so, you can put your electric vehicles up high. Make sure you are elevating all those electric batteries, electric items as well, because you know those batteries, once they start on fire, they cannot be extinguished. And we lost a lot of houses in the last storm based on that. So thank you all. I have never seen an evacuation of this magnitude, and our community has responded and responded very, very responsibly. So thank you for that. We are prepared for the storm. Worst case scenario is it is a bit north of the Tampa Bay area. Best case scenario is it is a bit south, but that is still not a good scenario. This is going to be a storm of historic proportions with wind, water, and rain. But we will get through this together and we will come back stronger. Now I'd like to have comments from the Chair of City Council, Guido Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So as the mayor said, time is of the essence. The window for evacuation is closing. As the wind speed pick up, you'll see the bridges shutting down, which will be announced this afternoon at some time. As the storm continues to approach us, it is picking up speed. It's expected to make landfall sooner than we originally thought. So if you are in an evacuation zone, this is a matter of life and death. Think about yourself. Think about your family. Keep yourself safe. We will get through this together. What is good to know is that we have a great team here at the City of Tampa. TPD is on standby. Tampa Fire Rescue is on standby, and so many other partners ready to assist in the recovery once this storm passes through. But in the meantime, we have to hunker down. We have to take all the precautions possible, not take anything for granted, because this is very serious. This is historically significant, and it could change Tampa as we know it. So we have to take all safety precautions and not take anything for granted. Having said that, I'd like to bring up Tampa Fire Chief Barbara Tripp.
Thank you. As the mayor and councilman has stated, the message we're trying to get out to everyone is about the evacuees. We want to thank the community for actually taking heed. We want to thank law enforcement, for taking their time going door to door to make sure we continue to protect our community. And most of all, we want everyone to be safe. So once again, if you're in those evacuation zones, we want you to make sure you get to a safe place. We have shelters throughout the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County. We will do everything we can to assist you to get to those shelters so you can be secure until the storm come through. As the mayor stated, we're going to have wind, rain, we're going to have storm surge. Hurricane Helene presented some challenges and a lot of people was affected by it, and we don't want that to take place with Hurricane Milton. Just to let you know, Tampa Fire Rescue is prepared. We do not abandon any fire stations, but whenever we're in the evacuation zone, we must leave as well. We continue to stay in those stations up until I decide to move those individuals way before the storm come here, because we know people are still leaving those areas in the case of any emergencies. So once again, we just want you to know that we're here for you. But when the time comes, we will remove those resources and put them in a safe place. Once again, we don't want to be put in any kind of danger. We want to be there to support our community, and we want you all to continue to help us help you. With that said, we have many resources that's been given to the City of Tampa, state and local resources, from additional transport units to additional strike team to additional water rescue teams. So we want to thank the community for all of their support as well. If you need any assistance, please reach out, text Tampa Ready to 888-777. Tampa Ready to 888-777, or for Spanish, Tampa Lista, 888-777, 888-777. That's Tampa LISTA. With that being said, we want everyone to be safe and definitely take all your family, make sure you keep in touch with your family and support one another. Want to thank the community. Now introduce Chief Burkle.
Thank you, Chief. The last 2.5 days, all of my officers have been assisting in evacuation efforts throughout the city. In fact, if you think about it in level or zone A and zone B, everyone that needs to be evacuated is monumentous tax. All of our officers are out there and assisting. In fact, this morning, even the most vulnerable, we are out there trying to evacuate. We want to save lives and we want to help. In fact, this morning I was in South Tampa, south of Gandy, an elderly female who wanted to ride out the storm we spoke to yesterday. We were able to convince her this morning that she needed to go. Her plan was to stay in her house with a flotation device and attempt to weather the storm. And my fear is that there's more of her out there that are like that. And we've done everything that we can do to help everyone through this storm. But again, as said before, the time's coming soon where we won't be able to respond. I will have to keep my officers in so we can respond out and assist everybody in the recovery efforts. So remember that we will get through this together and to hunker down and stay safe. And I'll have Mary Lou from TICO.
So much shorter than him. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Lou Karn from Tampa Electric. Everyone at Tampa Electric has been working around the clock to prepare for a safe restoration from Hurricane Milton. We've assembled more than 5,000 utility workers to assist us as soon as the storm has passed and it's safe to do so. This is the largest deployment of utility workers that Tampa Electric has ever assembled for a storm restoration, just to give you a little idea of how serious we are taking this storm. With a storm of this magnitude and intensity, we expect for there to be some serious damage to our infrastructure, which may lead to extended outages. We ask the customers, please be prepared for several days worth of essentials and to have patience with us, please, as we work to restore power after the storm safely. If you should experience a power outage at any time before, during, or after the storm, you can report it to us. It's a method that we use to keep track of outages and to put them into our restoration work plans. You may go to our website at tampaelectric.com/storm to access our outage map. You may text out to 27079, or you can call us at 877-588-1010. So a few tips I'd like to give today mostly revolve around during storm and after storm activities, because that is the phase that we have entered. Again, if you're going to use a portable generator, it can't be said enough to please use it outside, away from enclosed spaces.
So you were just listening to the city of Tampa give us a news conference. A lot of information there from the mayor earlier, really just reiterating that you need to follow those evacuation orders, and the time right now is really shrinking. She said solid waste is doing as much as they can to pick up all that household debris. They got about 70 to 80%, but soon they have to stop because the weather is just going to get too bad. The mayor also saying gas stations have gotten refueled. So I know that was a big concern last night into this morning. Gas stations, they were empty, but now gas is available for people to evacuate. And we did another shift change. So we want to welcome our Wendy Ryan to our coverage. We're going to be here for the duration.
Yes, for as long as the storm makes landfall, and then, of course, even after that to keep you all safe. All right, I believe we want to take some video from downtown St. Petersburg, and this is from earlier this morning, if we can switch to that. We're going to look at I-75 and the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see there the clouds rolling in as the rain begins to pick up, and of course, the weather continues to just get a little bit rough out there, as we're going to see throughout the day. Our coverage turns now to Polk County as well.
And our Jada Williams, she's joining the mix and she's in Davenport now. Jada, what are you seeing out there? We've seen a few people in Polk County and it seems to be the calm before the storm right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening right now, and people are utilizing that calm before the storm. I'm right here in a Publix parking lot here in Davenport. The Publix is closed, and as you can see, there's people that are still driving down and working to go and get their last-minute things. But I also met a family who was right here in this parking lot. Their cars were all huddled together. They said they made the last-minute decision just this morning to evacuate from St. Pete, and they ended up staying and sharing a shared rental, an 8-bedroom rental with friends who came right here to the Davenport area. I talked to them as they were consolidating their cars, trying to put as much as they could into 2 of the 4 cars that they had with them. And very briefly, they talked to me about everything that has been going through their minds as they prepare for whatever Milton will bring their way.
Yeah, it's a whole big mix of emotions, honestly. So we, we live in a peninsula in Pinellas County, and so just like leaving our home, like there were tears in the car multiple times, just like thinking about like this might be the last time we see all this. So it's a lot. We haven't really processed it yet, but it's our home and everything we love there. So yeah, it's a lot. It hasn't really sunk in yet that we don't know what we're going back to.
And that's a sentiment that I've been hearing a lot as I've talked to people throughout this week where I've been covering evacuations. Many people saying that they have said their final goodbyes to their home this go around. They say, Milton, something about it, that gut feeling that this is just something different. That is definitely the refrain that I have continued to hear since I've been talking to people, that they're grabbing their essentials. When I talked to the Hickey family just moments ago, they said that it was a last minute decision to decide to leave St. Pete, and they grabbed the essentials, of course, but they also grabbed things that are really important, like the family pictures, the marriage certificates, things like that, because in case they come back to the worst, they want to say that they at least made some room in their cars for some of the important personal things. But they told me the most important thing is that they feel safe in making that decision to get out, and hopefully they will remain safe as they wait out Milton, no matter what happens to their home and all of their material things back in St. Pete. I'm Jada Williams reporting in Davenport. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Jada, thank you. As she mentioned, so many residents saying goodbye to their homes. I did it just literally a day ago because I spent the night here last night as well. When you know that you're so close to the water or so close to what could be a Cat 4, Cat 5, you take it seriously. And she made a really good point, which is, just taking things that mean the most to you, which is what I did. Of course, the important documents, but then those pictures that you don't have on your phone, like your wedding pictures or things like that. Yeah.
And know that if you're making that decision to leave, you are escaping with your life.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what they always say. The most important thing is you, your family, your dogs, your animals, whatever that may be. The rest can be replaced. And it's really important to know that and realize that your safety is the most important thing. So if you are home and still deciding whether or not you should evacuate, please do before it gets too late. Because as they mentioned, it's going to get too late at some point where first responders can't come when the storm is in high gear.
That window is really, really shrinking.
Indeed, it is. Absolutely. Well, some residents who stayed back will be making the decision to ride out the storm in a shelter. And one of those shelters in Pinellas County is specifically designated for those special needs. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, we want to get to a news press conference in St. Petersburg. Let's listen in.
Storm and is expected to make landfall just south of the Tampa Bay area. This is an extremely dangerous threat to our area, and I urge you to finish all of your preparation efforts as soon as possible. We are expecting between 8 to 12 feet of storm surge and winds up to 100 miles per hour. We anticipate that we will begin to feel the impacts from Milton in the next few hours. If you have not evacuated yet, you are quickly running out of time and need to get to a safe place immediately. Whether that's a shelter or a friend's house, now is the time to figure out where you will shelter as the storm passes and take action now. When significant sustained winds arrive, our first responders will not be able to respond to calls for help until after the storm moves through our area. The county has opened additional
we're going to break away from all this live coverage of Hurricane Milton. We're going to take a break from all of this and get ourselves prepared for a program that I want to do to speak to you all about our country, Jamaica, and other parts of the Caribbean. Hopefully I can do so. If not, then I'll come back on with some more hurricane update. But for now, I'm going to break away from the hurricanes update and say thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for being a part of the Make We Talk program. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. And also, please remember us in your prayers. Please remember us in your prayers as we hunker down, bunker down, hunker down for this trust of Capit, Lord, for this major hurricane. For this major hurricane that's coming towards us. Thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you all so much for coming on to our program here on the Make We Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. We're freezing up because of what is going on. The weather out there is not good. Thank you all for being a part of the program. God bless.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly.
Thank you all for coming on to the program. I think my mic was muted earlier on. Thank you all for coming on the program. Thank you all for being a part of this program. Remember us in your prayers, please. Remember us in your prayers. As you go about your daily life today, remember us in your prayers. We truly need your prayers right now because Hurricane Milton is a very dangerous category 4. They said between tonight to tomorrow morning, it may be upgraded to a category 5 again. So this is not looking good. It's not looking good at all. Thank you all very much.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk.